Hey there, everyone. It is Valentine's Day, hence the red. Happy Valentine's Day. By the time you see this, it won't be Valentine's Day, but today is a pretty significant day in my life. So I wanted to get on and really share a little bit more about my story. I want to thank all of you who have reached out and written and called and have really given such positive feedback about the Rebel Nutrition YouTube channel, about my story. It really inspires me to continue to go on and to share the way I share, because it's not easy to do this, but if I can inspire you, if I can empower you, and if I can give you hope, then that's certainly what I'm here to do. So there are two really significant days in my life. I mean, of course, besides the birth of my children, because that goes without saying. But November 19th and February 14th. November 19th, 2000 was my cancer diagnosis day, a day that I often don't want to remember. And February 14th, which is my cancer cure day. And so I think my purpose today is to go a little bit more into my why. Really, why I do what I do, because why I do the things and everything that I do was based, really, at least at the second part of my life, was based off of my cancer journey. And so many of you know the story post-cancer, meaning I talk about my immune system being debilitated and what I've done in the area of integrative and functional medicine and nutrition, and how I got started, and subsequent things from there. But the interim is really what shaped me into more of who I am and the trajectory for that. And so I'll share a little bit of that today, because I think that gives a little yin to my yang. Like I said, it's hard to be vulnerable and hard to share some of this, but I feel like if there's someone out there who's listening who's afraid or not sure in what direction to go, or confused or sad or uninspired, then you know what? If I can help with my story in any way, then I feel fortunate to be able to do that. So my story begins when I was diagnosed on November 19th in 2000, and it was 6 weeks after the birth of my third child, little Ashley. And I remember going to the doctor because I had a very large bump on my neck, and my blood work, my 6-week postpartum blood work was out of whack, and my doctor was like, you have to go get it checked. So not thinking too much of it, although people started scaring me along the way because they would start feeling the lump, and there was concern there. So went and got checked. I remember going into the doctor's office. I was with Dan, my husband at the time, my only husband. And we walked in, and she looked at me and him and basically said, yes, we are pretty certain that you have, it looks like Hodgkin's lymphoma, which is a certain type of blood cancer. And I remember at that point feeling this vortex of like, I don't even know. It was like just a whoosh, like boom. I don't know. I think that's the only way to describe what people feel when you get a cancer diagnosis. I don't think there's any other way to articulate it. And I just remember looking at her, or Dan asked her, is she going to be okay? Is she going to survive? And I don't know that I heard her say, yes, there's a good survival rate. It was about 80%, but I didn't even listen to that, because I was just like, you know what? I am sitting here with 3 small children under the age of 4, and there was not going to be any acceptable answer other than, yes, I was going to survive. And I did like I generally do. I go into go mode. I can compartmentalize really well. Whether that's good or that's bad, I don't know. It's just what it is. And so I remember going home, and my parents were devastated, and everybody who was there was devastated. I remember calling one of my good friends, and I said, Marion, I have cancer. And she's like, what? You're like the healthiest person I know. How can you have cancer? And, you know, you sit there and go, I don't know. At the time, at least, I didn't know. Now I think I have a better idea. But, and I don't think we ever know, even though I could suppose all day long about the theories, we never know, right? It's a progressive illness. I'm sure it was growing while I was pregnant and probably even before that. And so I remember the week that ensued, I went and was just, we just did what we had to do to get me to a place where we would have answers. What was I going to do? Was I going to do chemo? And what did that look like? And went and had PET scans. I got into Sloan Kettering. I had the nodule removed on my on my clavicle, and then I was told that they found that it was Hodgkin's, and it was called bulky Hodgkin's. I had a very large tumor in my chest, probably the size of a large baked potato, as they described it. And at that point, it was go get a PET scan, go get a bone marrow biopsy, go do all of these things, and I just kind of rotely just did them because I was listening to everybody who knew better. And they did, right? That was what I did. And so I remember sitting down with the doctor after I had all those tests, and she looked at Dan and I and said, okay, so here's what we're going to do, and this is the kind of chemo, and this is what the schedule is going to be like, and here's the prognosis, and it's pretty good if we do this, this, and this. And then, of course, she goes through all of, well, the what ifs. If it spreads to your bone marrow, it's, right, all of the you know, the warning labels, so to speak. And I refused to actually listen to those, I think. I heard them, but I didn't listen because I was like, nope, that's not going to be me. I have 3 kids at home who need a mom, and there is no other option but survival. And that was very much my brain. I am that there was just no question that it was mind over matter at that point, of course, with chemo and radiation, but mind over matter. And I remember my dad and my aunt taking me to my first chemotherapy treatment. And I got in there and they gave me Ativan, which I would never take after that. It made me insane. I told the nurse, don't ever give me that. I was out of my mind. I mean, I was out of my mind enough, but it was just made me worse. And I remember them hooking me up, and I remember them putting the IV in, and I'm watching the bag, and part of what the treatment was a red, it's called adriamycin, it's called the red devil. I still get nauseous when I hear about it. I remember them hanging the bag, and we all just looked at each other, and the tears were flowing down both my aunt and my dad, and then me, because I watched them put this poison in that I knew was poison that was going to save my life. And I was resigned to the fact that I was going to do this week in and week out because I had 3 kids that needed a mom. And week after week I'd go in, and I am so blessed that my family was there, that my friends who would take me in week after week, and you know, we all had busy schedules and we had busy lives, but they would all take turns taking me into Sloan Kettering in New York and sitting with me and encouraging me, because it took hours and hours. It was almost the whole day to do that. And we'd laugh and we'd cry. And it got harder and harder because chemotherapy is cumulative. And finally, the week after, one of the weeks I got home and I realized I had to shave my head because my hair was just falling out, and which we knew was going to happen. But the reality as a woman of losing your hair is like, I cannot articulate that. We all love our hair, and that makes us feminine, I think, for some of us, at least did for me. And so I watched them shave my head. My mom was with me, and that was hard. I'm sure I cried. And I looked in the mirror and I said, oh my God, I look like my brother. Like, I never really thought I looked like my brother until I totally saw his face. Of course, he's cute, so There was some saving grace, but I knew I was not walking around without a wig. And so I had two different wigs. And I would joke with Jason because he was really, maybe Lindsay too, she remembers, or she was at least knowing a little bit, like I would take my hair off and put it on, and we would be like, what hair should mommy wear today? And the weeks got harder, and I would come home, and oddly enough, you know, Jason, who was for 4 and a rambunctious little kid, I'd come home. I think chemotherapy was mostly on a Wednesday, and I'd come home, and he would sit. He would, whatever he was doing, he knew mommy was home, and he would literally just come, and I had a bandage on my hand from the IV, and they would rotate sides of where my IV would go. And I didn't have a port, although I wish I did, because it was always a struggle getting the veins, which was always a little unnerving. But whichever side the bandage was on, he would come and sit, and he would just sit, and he would just sit with me, because he knew mom needed a little TLC that day. And it was intuitive. We hadn't told him anything. But he would just come over and make sure that I was okay. Somehow he just knew, as kids always do. And I also knew, I felt like I tried to keep things as normal as possible. I felt like I was reading Lance Armstrong's book. It's not about the bike. It is about the bike, whatever the book was at the time. And I felt like if I could go downstairs and work out in my basement, we had a whole gym and it was beautiful. And my friend Tracy would come and work out with me, and she'd always look at me like, "Are you okay?" I'd be like huffing and puffing. "No, I'm fine," because I felt like if I could work out, I was normal. If I worked out, I'd be okay, because that was always part of my daily routine. And so I just felt like that was what I needed to do. And I went through radiation shortly after that. But in between radiation and chemo, I was able to take a trip with Dan. But I remember being terrified to go on the trip, because I was like, what if we're both on the plane and the plane goes down, and, you know, now the kids have no parents. And I remember very specifically and very poignantly, Dan looked at me. And I'll never forget this, because this reverberates in my head all the time. He said, "Babe, if God wanted you, he had 12 weeks to take you. And he didn't. And you are still here, and you have a bigger purpose. So this plane is not taking you down." And with that, we went on our first vacation in a long time. And I remember coming home, and I remember going through radiation, and the doctors telling me, well, you know, they had to tattoo you, and sitting on the table, and then one of the doctors would come in and be like, "Oh, well, you know, don't be surprised, your thyroid's probably going to fail in a few years because you're having mantle lobe radiation." And in the rebellious style that I've always done things, I basically said, "No, that is not going to happen to me, because I'm going to do what I can to prevent that." And then once treatment was done and I was cured, I basically turned to my doctor, because I was not feeling well after my treatments. And I said to her, "So what's next? What does the recovery look like?" And there was no option. There was no, "Yeah, we can do this for you. We can do that for you." It was like, "Well, we cured your cancer, and so you're on your own." And that's really what started my journey after that. What started my whole introspection and work into, there's got to be more. This can't be all. Because I don't feel well, and I need to keep going, and I need to take care of my children who need me. And so when I went down to Mexico and learned from these amazing integrative doctors, and came outside my box, because as a clinical dietitian, I was very much in the box, and was not open-minded to other therapies, because we weren't exposed to that. And we were always taught to be the skeptic about what was out there. And when my mother-in-law talked about vitamin therapy, and I'm like, "No, vitamins don't work." You know, she was the heretic of the time. And then I went down and sat with these amazing integrative oncologists who started to connect the mind-body connection for me, and started to talk about the chemicals in the brain that resonate in the body and how everything is connected. And they talked about the Eastern philosophy of acupuncture and Chinese medicine and all of these things that I had never ever heard about before, and how they integrate into our lives and make these connections that somehow we never made. I studied biochemistry, I studied microbiology, I studied anatomy, yet nobody ever sat with us and said, okay, but you know what, this is all interconnected and the body is one system. And so the molecules of emotion, as Candace Pert talked about it in her book, Molecules of Emotion, the molecules that go on in the brain are impacted by the body, and vice versa. We talk about butterflies in our stomach. We now know that there's a gut-brain connection, and as medicine, as integrative medicine and functional medicine has taken us through the years, and I've been lucky enough to be able to study that and really meld all of these things together in my life's work, in the passion that I do, in the passion that I work with the work that I get to do every day. I'm able to take a step back and go, oh yes, this makes so much sense. And I was able to do that after I finished treatment, or not finished treatment, after I finished my integrative treatment, and I was sent home with these vaccines that reinvigorated my immune system. And all of a sudden I was eating foods that I was like, oh yes, this is what real whole food nutrition is. And the mind piece of understanding why did I need to breathe? Why did I need to meditate? How did that resonate in the body? How does that relieve stress? And so all of that cumulative knowledge I have been able to take into my work and educate and inspire and empower the people that I work with every day. Because to be told it's in your head and not be offered a option of what you can do to balance your body, or to be told that it's just because you're getting older that you deteriorate, was never in my vocabulary. It was never something that I entertained, because I knew better, because I knew that what goes on inside is manifested on the outside, that our unique biochemistry, and now I get to do this with the DNA work, which is fascinating, because I've always used myself as the N of one. I've always been able to, after I was sick, after I went through all of this treatment and subsequent work, I was my own N of one. I worked on healing my immune system. I worked on balancing out the mind and the body. I worked on all of that because I wanted to be able to say, yes, I've done this, and now I can help you do it. And that's, that was originally why I went into the healthcare field in the first place. Those of us that choose healthcare, we do it, whether we're a doctor, a nurse, ancillary, whatever it is, we do it to help people. And so I knew that this area of work was boundless in terms of how we can help people. And now, as we have walked through, I've literally grown up with functional medicine and been able to, first we understood inflammation and what that did in the body, and then we started with the gut microbiome, and now the brain, and yes, we are all connected. And how do we use that information in a way to support our health? How do I run quarterback for the clients that I work with to organize their health in a way that makes sense? Because I knew if it made sense for me, I could take that and share that. And that was what I wanted to do. I wanted to be able to say, gosh, you know what? I can give you hope. I can teach you how to help heal your body, or how you can teach your body how to heal itself, because ultimately our bodies want to heal. We are about survival. And so that's really my message. That's my life work. That's my story. And I hope that I get to continue to do what I do in the way that I do it, and continue to learn, because I learn every day. I learn from my clients, I learn from my children, I learn from, it's like I'm a sponge. And so if I can use that again to inspire, to empower, to educate, then I know the work that I do and continue to do will live on. And so I wish you all a wonderful, not Valentine's Day only for one day, but open your heart every day to the endless possibilities of what you can be. Thank you for letting me share.